Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So in our last session, we are discussing about the basics of the BPC system with respect to what is the dimension, what is environment, how to log in into an environment, and how to use the dimensions that are provided by SAP BPC system with respect to different kind of dimensions, and what if there is any additional dimension requirements, how to use the additional dimension requirements with respect to user defined dimensions. So for creating any model, that is the first source through which we will be entering our data. So at model level we will be entering your data. It is similar to your BWQ. So when we are entering the data in your model, there are certain mandatory master data that is required. So with respect to BPC, the master data lies in dimensions. So in order to create a particular model, there are certain mandatory dimensions that are required for BPC in order to create a model in the BPC system. So we will discuss what are all the mandatory dimensions in order to create a model. So for any of the customization, we will be logging into planning and consolidation administration section. Previously we discussed about dimensions, and we have seen what each dimension does and what is the significance of each dimension, except some of the dimensions which are especially meant for consolidation. Other things we have discussed, and we have said that the consolidation related dimensions, when we are discussing on the consolidation part, we will take care on those consolidation related dimensions. And when I am talking about models, so when we start for the first time, when we implement into the BPC system, your environmental shell will have consolidation, ownership, planning, and rates. These are the 4 models that are provided by SAP by default when you copy something from the environmental shell. This is somebody has created it, but in live scenario you will have these 4 applications or models that will be appearing in your screen when you copy from environmental shell to your own environment. So for consolidation purposes, there is a requirement to have certain mandatory dimensions. We will discuss consolidation separately. So at present we will discuss on the planning part. So what are all the dimensions that are required for planning, and what are all the mandatory dimensions, and how we will be linking it to the other non-reporting applications. So in models we are having 2 types of models. One is reporting model and another is non-reporting, or we call in BPC as driver dimensions. So non-reporting or driver dimensions means it only stores certain information which is useful for reporting applications. Take an example like rates or ownership. These are non-reporting applications. Why these are called non-reporting applications is on rate application we will not draw any reports, we will not generate any reports, we will not create any logics on the rates or ownership. What we will do in ownership and rate applications is, in rate application we will maintain currency exchange rates, and ownership we maintain ownership percentages. So these applications will just store information which is required either for planning or for consolidation purposes. So wherever you are doing certain calculations, reporting and everything, those are called reporting applications. And wherever you are just storing information like ownership and rates are called as non-reporting applications. So we'll just go inside and we'll see how to create application and how to select whether it is a non-reporting or. Similar to our dimension maintenance, either we can copy the existing planning application. So when you copy the planning application, which is the existing application, what it will do is it will copy all the dimensions and the data which is there in the planning application into the copied version. Or you can create your own application using the new option. First of all, we'll see with new option what it does and what are all the mandatory dimensions. Go to new. So when you're creating model, you have to give certain ID. So I'm just putting it as say so I'm just copying that. Press next. See here, whatever we are discussing, that is reporting and non-reporting. Non-reporting is also called drivers and rates. Exchange rate is nothing but your rate application. Ownership is your ownership application. We can create these two also from this particular section. Generally, we will use these two, which is provided by SAP system, because there we are not doing much of the things. We just require to store exchange rates and ownership. So whatever SAP provided will be sufficient. That is why generally in live environment we will not create these two. We will use the existing version of ownership and rates. So when it comes to reporting application, here we are having two things. One is standard, financial and consolidation. Financial is nothing but which is used for planning purposes. Consolidation is used for consolidation purposes. Standard is meant for if you don't want to create anything with predefined any instructions and all. If you want to create everything from the scratch, then you have to use standard, and here you have to use generic. But nobody will use these two things, because if you start using these two, then SAP provided logics, SAP provided business rules will not be available in these two. So people will use financial for planning purposes, consolidation for consolidation purposes with certain predefined rules set up by the SAP BPC system, which they can customize according to their own requirement. So always use financial or consolidation when you are doing or when you are creating your model with respect to reporting applications. And here when you select the financial model, it will automatically link it to exchange rates application. We'll see how it will do that. So I'll be selecting financial because I am creating a planning application, so I am selecting financial. Now if you see here, model containing exchange rates, you have to specify which model stores the exchange rates. As we discussed, we are storing the exchange rates in the rate application. So we are linking that rate application to the financial application. As I said, always non-reporting applications will be linked to financial applications in order to support the planning or consolidation. So if I select consolidation, along with the currency, I need ownership also. So there is a multiple assignment. Both rate and as well as ownership will be assigned. Now if you see, rates as well as ownership. Now there is something called data entry. What is data entry is, suppose I am having January 10, February 10. If I am entering January 10 and February 10, that is called periodic data entry. Instead, if I am entering January 10, January plus February, total value 20, then it is called YTD mode. Generally our planning happens on periodic mode, whereas consolidation happens on YTD mode. So when you select consolidation, you have to select YTD. When you select planning, you have to select periodic. This is generally the followed approach by planning and consolidation teams. When they are doing planning, month-wise they will do what is the sales they are going to do and all. But when it comes to consolidation, till year to date, what is my profit, what is my balance sheet, all those things they will do YTD basis. So that is the distinction we have to make using the data entry mode option. Kamesh is having a question. Do we have an option of copying dimensions and models from another environment to this environment? As I said, Kamesh, whenever we are working in BPC system, we will be working under one particular environment. So within the environment, you can copy models, you can copy the dimensions. Outside the environment, you cannot do it anything. So for any purpose in the live environment, client will have only one environment. Under environment, you will have multiple models and multiple dimensions will be there. So anytime you will be working within one environment only. So once we selected it as financial application and made it as periodic, and model we are maintaining the exchange rates is exchange rate. Even though if your client doesn't have any currency conversion also, but still they have to maintain this particular model containing exchange rates because that is mandated by BPC system. If you don't have any exchange rate requirement, then don't maintain the exchange rate. But for creation purposes, you have to mandatorily maintain that option. Then we are having source model. So if I am selecting planning and if I am selecting it as a source model, what happens is, what are all the dimensions that are there in the planning application or planning model will automatically display in this particular model also. If you want, you can maintain the same, or if you want to delete something and add something, you can maintain the same. Otherwise, if you want to maintain it as a blank model, then system will suggest you what are all the mandatory dimensions that are required. Suppose I am selecting it as a blank model. Press next. Now I selected it as a blank model. Once I selected it as a blank model, system will not show any of the selected dimensions in the dimension list because I have not selected any from any source model. So what I have to do, I have to select the dimensions required for this application by myself. If you see here, the below red color mark, it is showing you need to have A type dimension. We have discussed what each type refers to, and it's showing category C type dimension, entity E type, currency, and time. These are the 5 mandatory dimensions in order to create a financial application. If you are talking about consolidation application, there are 9 mandatory dimensions. So when we are discussing on consolidation part, we will discuss that. But for planning purposes, the minimum requirement is to 5. And apart from 5, whatever you want to have as a user defined dimension like cost center, customer, anything which depending upon your requirement, you can create additional dimensions part of your dimension maintenance. So right now, what I am saying is account dimension is mandatory. So I will select account dimension and category dimension. System is very slow. Category dimension and then entity dimension. I did not know your name, WWU09. So the recording is not with me. You can ping it to Techie Training, so they will provide you that option to make you as an organizer. The entity dimension, then the currency type dimension, that is R, reporting currency. and then time dimension, that is T. Now once you selected the mandatory dimension, system will show all required dimension types have been included. So I have included all the required types. If I want, I can add additional types also, like audit trail I can add. Then there is no restriction with respect to other types. User defined dimensions like customer I'll add, product I'll add. Like this, I can add any other type of dimensions apart from the mandatory dimensions. I can add any other type of dimensions that are required for my planning purposes. Once I added, I can select next. We'll discuss on the secured part separately in the security section, how to maintain security and what are all the things that are taken into consideration when we are discussing on the security part. Press next. Oh, today's system is very slow. Now it will show, once I select next final, it will show it is creating a model that is required. So once the model is created, it will show like this. Mitesh is having a question. What is secure dimension? Yeah, Mitesh, just now I am talking about that. The security related part we'll discuss on the security section. When we are discussing on the security, we'll discuss the mandatory requirements and how to set up the security using security. So once you created your application or model, it will be shown like this. Planning underscore Jan, and the type what we have chosen is financial model. That is why it is showing the type as financial model. If you drag this way, okay, system is showing which type of model it is representing. And here, similar way how we have done for dimension, we can copy this model. When we are copying it, we have to say what is the model name which we are copying. I am just putting plan underscore 2. Just press copy. So what it will do is, it will create the replica of what is available. The same replica it will create. If you are creating as a new, you have an option to select the different dimensions what are required, whether it is a financial application or not. All those options you will be having. But when you are copying it, what are all the existing thing, the same thing will get copied with the same dimensionalities. Now if you go inside, now if you see here, these are the dimensions which we have chosen for plan underscore Jan, which we copied it to this particular thing. So the same dimensions will get copied, and when you want to change the description, you can change the description from here. So I am just putting some odd number and you can save it. And yeah, Sandeep is having a question, can dimensions be shared among different environments? No, Sandeep. I just answered one question previously. There was a question that whether dimensions or models can be shared or can be copied from different environments. What I am saying clearly at that point of time and now also, when we are working, we will be working inside one particular environment only. That is the highest level. So apart from that level, you cannot copy anything. Within the environment, you can do any copying or deleting anything within the environment only you can be working. So for a client environment, it will be only one environment, single environment per client we will be maintaining. Within the environment, you might be having consolidation related requirements, planning related requirements, copying from consolidation to planning and planning to consolidation, but not between the environments. Everything will be within one environment only. Sorry, I did not get your question, Sandeep. Properties of the dimensions are also different info object means? I did not get your question properly, but as we discussed in our first class, whatever we are creating as a dimension that will be created as an info object in the backend, we have seen that, and whatever model we are creating, it is created as a cube in the backend, and whatever environment we are creating, it will create as an info area. And within the dimension, if you are adding any of the properties in BPC, that will be created as an attribute to the info object in the backend system. That also we have seen in our first class. So yeah, this is what I am saying, Sandeep, which we have already discussed in our first class clearly, how an attribute is linked to how attributes are also will be added to the backend system when we are adding any attributes from the dimension list.
So basically the dimension attributes are technically not info objects, not visible on the screen.
There are a lot of disturbance coming from your end. I am not able to hear you. Sandeep?
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, Sandeep.
Am I audible?
A lot of yeah, you're audible, but lot of disturbances coming.
Okay, then I will type it.
What is the check of values? I did not get you. See, whatever properties we are generating from the front end, that will be created automatically as a attributes in the back end. So if you want to bring it into the BPC system, it's already stored in the BPC master data. Yeah, that we have already discussed in our first class. Clearly we have seen how an attribute we have created from the front end. We have seen how it has been updated in the back end as the info object area level. So in your BW system, you will be called as attributes. In BPC, we call it as properties, which is an equivalent one. So when we are talking about, we can change the description and it will show what is the application we have created and what is the model we have attached, that is exchange rates, rate application, and then data entry mode, which is the periodic data entry. And these are the different options that are available. We'll discuss one by one when we are discussing on the each part. Work status for workflow and locking, data audit for audit configuration, journal template only for consolidation, comments when we are discussing on the comments part. And if you want to use the BPC system info cube as a source data for other information, you have to tick mark this so that other people can access this particular info cube and create their own dashboards and all by linking the data to this particular info cube. So for that purposes, then you have to make this as a use as a source of data for other modules also. So the other things we will discuss each one at the point when we are discussing on the each topic. And then there is something called secured, which we have seen when we are creating this application. So when we are talking about security part, we will see how to make any of the dimensions secured and what are all the things that are part of security and how to maintain security and all at the time of security. Since the data happens always at model level, all the settings which you are performing, either security, work locking, data audit, comments, everything will be created at a model level. So I'm just closing this application or model. So now we have seen how to create dimensions and how to use the dimensions that are created in the dimension library in order to create a particular model. When we are creating a model, we have seen what are all the mandatory dimensions that are required in order to create a model. Is audio is clear or anyone facing the audio issues? We have a problem from Mitesh. Are anyone also facing the same issue? One minute. Hari, can you ping Techie training team so that they will know the dial-in number for US and all? They are not answering your question? Okay, I'll also ping from. Okay, because they are the one who is organizing this screen. So they will be knowing the numbers to dial in. I'll not be having, I'll be just logging into the link which they will be providing. Oh, even I need to check after the class only because right now even I am pinging them. So I don't have any other option other than pinging them also. So I'll also check. Okay. With respect to audio, is it clear to everyone? No? Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah. Mitesh, I think it is only from your end you are facing because other people are saying they don't have any issue at all till now. Can you just check from your side any? Okay, because other people are saying they have not faced any issue till now. Okay, now it is clear for everyone, right? So we can start the session. So till now whatever we have discussed is how to create the model and how to use the dimensions from the dimension library to create a particular model, and what are all the mandatory dimensions like account, category, entity, time, and then currency is the mandatory dimensions in order to create a particular model. Apart from that mandatory dimensions, you can select any additional dimensions that are required. But for each of the type which we are selecting, only one dimension can be selected. Not more than one dimension you can select for same type. Suppose if I am going and adding and removing dimensions, additional dimensions. Suppose if I am adding any dimension with the same type. Suppose here there is something called O underscore account, which is a type A account only. Already I am having A type already in the selected dimensions. If I try to add this, see, you will receive an error message. You cannot add more than one dimension of the following types A. That means at any point of time in your selected dimension list, the type of dimension, account, audit, will be only one dimension per each of the type. User defined dimension will have U3, U1, a different type. That is why system allows additional dimensions with user defined values. So we have discussed about the master data, what is environment, how to copy the environment and create our own environment, dimensions, and we discussed on each dimension what it does with respect to planning related things, and then models. We have seen what is reporting, non-reporting, and then we have seen how to create a model with the mandatory dimensions and other dimensions added to that. Now we will go into the home screen. Yeah, Kamlesh is having a question. Once the model is created and data is loaded, is it possible to delete the dimension if no dimension is added? Can the existing row be updated easily? No, no Patel. Whatever we are talking is before we load the production data. So whatever customizations you are doing, it should be done before loading the data. Once you loaded the data, then if you want to change any of the master data, you have to delete the entire data, and then you have to delete the existing dimension, and then you have to add the new dimension, and again you need to do the entire data load. So you cannot change the structure with simple deletion. You have to do entire dropping of data and then delete the dimension and then add the new dimension, and with new dimension your transaction data should be modified, and then new dimension data can be loaded into the BPC system. Okay, so now we'll discuss about the report creation through web, which is the starting point to work on the web related section of the BPC thing. So whatever we are discussing, we will be discussing initially what are all the web related options, and once we discuss the web related options, we will go into the important thing, Excel related options, and then we will discuss each of the topic like work status, security, BPF by each topic wise. So first we will go through the web section. So in web we can create a report, input form, and workspace. So first we'll discuss about input form and then we'll discuss the other two. What is input form and report with respect to BPC is the only difference between input form and report in BPC is in input form we can enter the data and send the data to the database. But in report you can only view the data. That is the only difference with respect to input form and report. All the options that are available in input form will be available in report, and all the options that are there in the report will be available in input form. Only input form will have additional button called save data. I think system is very slow. I'll just log off and log in again. Now we will discuss on the new input form. In order to create in the BPC system any input form, we need to have row access and column access. In any input template, wherever you are working, there will be one thing called row access and column access. Row access is nothing but what should be there in the rows and what should be there in the columns, either time or whatever you want to keep. And when I am logging for the first time, here it is showing these are the dimension values, and it is showing only category and time, and it is not displaying other dimensions also, and it is showing the dimension members, that is nothing but values within the dimension, not the dimension names. And I don't know to which model I have connected to. So for that purpose I have to click on this particular button, the blue color checkboxes button. You click on that. Hi everyone. Are you able to see my screen? Okay, thank you. Now we are discussing that we will be able to see only the actual and January and not the other dimensions which we are selected, and we don't know which model we are connected to. So for that purpose we have to select which model we are connected to by clicking on this checkbox. Now it will show I am connected to model called consolidation. I can change it to other models to which I am working upon, and I can select display dimensions and display all. Now if I select display all, then it will show all these things, the dimension name and time name. Along with that, I am having other additional dimensions also displaying here. If I want to see all the dimensions in the context, click on the plus button. You have to press add all dimensions. Then what it will do? It will add all the dimensions and the members which are pre-selected. And whenever we want to select other members, you can double click on this and it will display the values which are there. You can select whichever is required for your purpose. So, but for the first time when I am creating it, it is just showing actual and January, and it is showing it is connected to model called consolidation. How this system knows, I have to first show it as consolidation only, and I have to select only actual and Jan. If I want to change it to model, other model, I have to select change model, and I have to select which model I want to connect it to. So right now I created plan underscore Jan. I'll go to that particular model. Press OK. Now it is connected to Jan underscore plan underscore Jan, which is having these particular dimensions. Here also if I want to see other dimensions, I have to plus, select plus, press add all dimensions. Then it will display the dimensions, and if you click on this button, it will display it is connected to model underscore plan. Now I can draw something into row axis and something into column axis, and I can start working. But initially how the system knows which model it needs to connect and what needs to be displayed and all will be based on the settings which we are maintaining in the planning and consolidation administration. Under features we have something called context defaults. So whenever I am talking about any input form, In the input form, when I'm talking about this particular header section, whatever is the header section, this is called the context. Context means based on which we are seeing the present data is called context. Based on that selection criteria, we are seeing the data in this particular format. That is called context. So which one needs to be displayed in the context, and how the system knows that is based on the context defaults we are maintaining it here. Now if you see here, by default consolidation is selected as default model. That is why when you log in into a new input form or a new report, even if you log in into a new report, the first base model selected will be the consolidation model, because in the administration section context defaults we have selected consolidation as a default. And now if you see here in the dimensions, if you see here, for category it is selected as S and for time it is selected as S. That is why when you open this input form, the category actual and time 2006 is being displayed. Why? Because we have selected display dimensions as yes only to category and time. Now if you, I'll close this and I will open again. There you can see now again I will open new input form. See, now I am able to see actual and Jan. Actual is category dimension and time is time dimension. Why it is showing here? Because category is selected as S and time is selected as S. Now if you see here, there are two sections here also. One is display dimension and another is display dimension name. And here in the input form, it is showing only the display dimension values, not the name. Category is equal to actual and time is equal to January 2006. It is not displayed. Why? Because in this context, display dimension name I have selected it as no. If I want to make it as display dimension name also, I have to go to edit and select dimension name also as yes. And time I am not selecting in order to show you the difference. Just save and close. Now close this input form. Again open the input form. Now if you see the difference, now it is showing the dimension name category and for time it is not showing. Why? Because for category only I have selected show the dimension name, for time I have selected no. Like this you can select any dimension which needs to be displayed by default when you are opening a new input form and report. And when you are opening this input form, by default certain selections will be taken into the BPC system. Why only certain selections will be taken? Because those are the first members of the dimensions which is there in your dimension list. For category dimension, actual will be the first member. If you go and see your dimension library, because we are creating these things for the first time in this application. If you have already selected any of the dimension values, then whatever is your pre-selected will be shown. Sorry. Now category. See, this is the first member. By default, it will be showing those values, and if you want to change, you can change the values according to your requirement. And then if you want to add other dimensions, you have to press add dimension. If you want to change it, we can change these dimensions to display all the dimensions. So if you press display all, it will display all the dimensions. No, V is having a question. Can we program it to show the current year? No. When we are working for the web related thing, we don't have an option, but when we are working in Excel, it will show whatever is the latest previous selection that will be shown in the Excel part, but not here. Patel is having a question. In one model, we can have only one dimension with same property. Let's say dimension called currency. Now if I want to have three different currencies in model, transaction, legal and group currency, how this can be achieved? See, first of all, this is not a transaction system where you will be maintaining different transaction currencies and all. This is a reporting system. A reporting system will always be maintained in local currency, and group currency or reporting currencies will be done through what you call it as currency conversion. So like your transaction system, for each of the transactions we will not be maintaining what is transaction, what is local and all. When we are doing planning or consolidation, it is on the balance, which is the cumulative balance, not by individual transaction wise. So there is no requirement to maintain transaction, legal and group currency. Whatever we will be maintaining will be the entity currency in each of the entity, and then that will be converted using the business rules in order to convert it into reporting and group currencies. Not directly we will be maintaining all the things, because in BPC we need to maintain local currency and then conversion rate in order to get the group currency as well as reporting currencies. And then if you want to add, you can add the other dimensions as well. Now here in our configuration, if we want by default to display any of the values, like V is asking, can I make it as by default current year? We cannot make current year as by default, but if we want to make it as a default member, we can maintain that default member from here. Suppose if I want category, in reporting I want to see, when I open it should show plan, actual. But when I use the input template, it should show, say, budget. For our understanding purposes, I am choosing different things. And here also, I can display only the description, ID as well as description. Here I will select ID and description. And time also. If I select, so when I am reporting, I should see January as my base period, when by default it will show January as my base period. Sorry, 2008 March. When I am opening my input template, say I should see 2012.jan. So like this, I can specify some default members, and I can specify how I want to see, whether ID and description, only description, or like that. Now save. Now I have changed the context. Just we will close this and we will open again how it will show. Now from home screen I will open one report and one input template. Again system. I don't know why today it is creating so many problems. Now we'll open one report and one input form. And we will see our configuration through planning and consolidation administration screen. Under features, under context defaults. Now what we have selected, when I open report it should show category as actual and time as 2008.03, and in actual it should show ID and description, but in time it should show only ID. Now go here. Now if you see category actual, both ID and description it is showing, and in here time it is showing 2008.03. Why? Because of our selection criteria in reporting actual and 2008.03 by default. Now if I open input template it should show budget and 2012.01. Now if you see here, category is showing budget, both ID as well as description, and time it is showing 2012.01 only ID based on the conditions which maintained in the context defaults. And we have made context defaults for consolidation. Why we have selected consolidation as a default model. If you want to select plan underscore Jan also as a default model, select that particular plan underscore Jan. And then press select, set it as a default value. Now model plan underscore Jan has been set it as default model when you open a report or input template. Now I am just logging off in order to take the changes into place. open this features, context defaults. Now if you see plan underscore Jan is showing as default model. Now you try to open a report. Now it is showing actual and 2006. Why? Because for plan underscore Jan, we have not selected any members to be displayed by default, and category and time is only selected as S. So when you select again any other model as a default model, you have to come and explicitly maintain the context defaults in order to have your values taken into consideration. And time period, I am selecting by default. And I am not selecting any other things, just to show you how it will look like. Now come here, open an input form. Now see, time is showing January 2013 because I have selected Jan 2013 in the data input. In reporting, I have not selected anything. I'll just open a report. So it is by defaulted to 2006, which is the first value. And here also actual it is showing because it is the first value. In input form also actually shown because in category I have not selected in the data input level what needs to be shown by default. So that is why it is taking the first value into consideration. So that is how you will be using your context defaults, which model needs to be maintained as a default model, and once it is maintained, what are all the things you can add it as a default members in the each of the dimension level you can specify. Now we are in plan_Jan and we want to display all the dimensions. So press display all and then go here, add all dimensions in order to see the data in the particular context column. Now in order to create a report, you need to have something in rows and something in columns. So in order to understand the reporting part, or either input form or a report, the options will remain the same as we discussed. We'll just drag some things into row axis and something into column axis in order to create a report and see the different options. So I'm dragging account into rows and time into columns. So we have a problem with customer dimension. So we'll take account and we'll take time into columns. Now if I select only add dimensions, it will display the dimension member values only. It will not display the dimension names. If I want to display the dimension names also, click here, display all. Now it will display with dimension name. Now here it is showing land and buildings. Why? Because by default it is selecting the context member. Now when I am modifying my template, sometimes I need to select it from context. The user should be given an option to select it from the context. When I select it from context, whatever the value is shown there, it needs to display taking into consideration other values. So if I am storing a record, it will be stored against actual, Jan, land and buildings, entity consolidation entity, currency euro, audit trail is this, measures, product and customer. This is the one line item it will store and the value for January 2013. So in the backend system stores the record like this. But if I want to have different options that are available here in the rows, either in rows or columns, the options will remain the same. So we'll see from account perspective what are all the different options that I can select it from the row perspective. Whatever is there in the row perspective, the same options will be there in the column perspective also. But for our understanding purposes, row will be very easy to understand, so we'll concentrate on the row axis. Now if I want to select the members, I have to select members button. Now here there are lot of options that are available. We will see one by one what each member does, what each option does, and what is the significance. Single member and current context. So as we discussed, context means this particular area. In account dimension, I have chosen in rows. So in rows, what it should define is based on the context value, that is land and buildings. That is what I have selected. Single member, current context. So press OK. Now, if I change land and buildings to, say, total assets. Now see, system is showing total assets. So whatever I am changing in the context, system is showing that value directly in the rows. So this is one option with which I can build the reports, because in different reporting requirements will require different options to be shown. That is why we are discussing each of the option. So if I want to select from the context the user, I can select, I can allow the member to select from the current context, and it will display only the single member. And here I have another option called fixed member. So what is the difference between fixed member and a context is, context you are allowing the user to select it from the top node. If you are selecting it as a fixed member, now I am selecting, it should display only financial income and expense in this particular template. Okay. Now, even if I change from the context, say to fixed assets or any other member, it won't have any impact on the row access, because in row, what I did, I made the accounts which needs to be displayed in the row as fixed members, which are not dependent on the context. So for each of the option I am having, I have an option to select either from the context or make it as a fixed member. What is the difference between the two is, if I am making it as a fixed member, then what it will become? It will become a static report. That means the end user has no chance of changing any members of the account. If I am making it as a context, what is the difference is, it is becoming as a dynamic report, and based on the user selection, the members of the account dimension or rows will keep on changing. That is similar to column also. So sometimes what happens is, you might want to have the fields which are defined in the account dimension members only to be displayed. The user by mistake also, he should not change the values that is displayed in the rows. There are some specific formats that will be there. In those cases we will use fixed members, other cases we will use it as current context. So depending upon requirement, the usage will also change, and how you develop the report will also keep on changing. Now we have seen single member. This current context and fixed member will be used for all the options that are available here. So we are discussing using the current context for our understanding purposes. Now we have discussed single member with current context and fixed member. Now I am discussing on children of. So children of current context means whenever I am selecting anything from the current context, it will display the children below the current context value. Here, include starting member. I'll just remove this and I'll show you what is the difference it will show. Now, I'll select balance sheet. Under balance sheet, what is the children? That is the immediate base level under the top node. Under balance sheet, I have total assets and total liabilities. Under total assets, I have fixed assets. So what it means is, children means in the hierarchy, the next level members will be shown. So that is why it is showing total assets and total liabilities. Even though I selected balance sheet, it is showing only the children's. It is not showing the parent which I have selected. If you want the parent also to be selected, then you have to select include the starting member. What is the starting member? Balance sheet, whichever is the selected one. Press OK. Now if you see here, if I selected balance sheet, it is showing balance sheet and total assets and total liabilities. If I select only total assets, it will show under total assets what are there, fixed assets and current assets. See, automatically it is showing the children value of the total assets. Because I have selected context, that is why based on the context changes, here also my row axis is also changing. And here, if you see, total assets is showing on the top and the children is showing on the below. And sometimes you might have a requirement just a minute, I'll be back. Yeah, right now it is displaying the parent member before the children's. If I want the total assets should be displayed below the children, then I have an option to select parent should be displayed after the children has been displayed. So sometimes some clients might have reporting requirements, the total should come down. Some clients will have total should come up. So based on the requirement, we have to modify our customization in order to support the client requirements. So like this, we can add parent should come first or parent should come after. And we are seeing the children of, which will display only the children below the whatever we have selected from the context. I am not discussing on the fixed member because the difference between context and fixed member is only when you change it from here, it will change. Otherwise, if you don't want the change to happen from the context, you will be choosing as a fixed member. But the option remains the same. Whether you select children or any other thing, the context and fixed member will have the same effect. So I am discussing all the things with current context into consideration. Now we have another thing called descendants of. So what is meant by descendants of means it will show till the base level is reached. Now if I select balance sheet, you will be able to understand much easier. Now if you see here, the balance sheet is the top node. Under balance sheet I have liabilities and then total assets. Under liabilities, total liabilities. Under the total equity, total assets. So if I am confusing with this kind of hierarchy, I can select the parent member should come first. So parent before. Now if you see here, I have balance sheet, under balance sheet total assets and total liabilities. Under total assets, fixed assets and land and buildings. So I am having a 4-level hierarchy. I'm having 4-level hierarchy. So this is called top node. Under that children, this is the base node. Base node is nothing but what is the last node in the hierarchy. So it is displaying till the last level which is available. If I choose children, it will display only one level below. If I choose descendants, it will display till the last level. And sometimes what happens is I don't want to see till the base level. I want to see only till the second level is there in my reporting purposes, because I am not concerned about individual line items. I don't want to see what is my shareholders equity, retained earnings. I want to see my total equity only from the management perspective. So some kind of reporting require only 2 levels. If I choose children, I can give only 1 level below. But if I choose descendants, I will give till the last level. So if I want to choose only 2 levels, I have an option. In the descendant section, you have an option to select number of levels it needs to display. If I select 2 levels, it will only display 2 levels. The land and buildings will not be displayed. See now, it is displaying till the fixed assets level. Land and buildings is the 3rd level from the top node which we have selected. So like this, using the descendants, you can control how many levels you want to see in the reporting part also. So that is the another option. Now we have base members. Here include parent members means it will include the top node which you have selected, which order it needs to select. This option remains the same for all the options using the base, children, descendants. Now what is the base member here refers to means whatever is the last nodes. You see here under total assets, last node is land and buildings. As we discussed, whatever is the last node which doesn't have child is called base nodes in BPC. So it will display all the base nodes which is the last levels. So here accounts receivable is the last node, cash is the last node. So it is displaying accounts receivable, cash. Like that, under balance sheet header, whatever is there it is displaying. And if you see here, there is something called net income, which is a separate hierarchy, which is equivalent to balance sheet. That is why it is not displaying the net income values. It is displaying the base members under balance sheet only. So that is the option. If we use the base members, we will be getting only the base members. Somebody will have a doubt why we need to use base members option only. Because in BPC, the data entry always happens at base level. And top nodes, the data entry will be roll up. All the data will be rolled up. We cannot enter data at the top node at all. All the data always happens at base node. That is why when we are drawing input templates, sometimes we need to display only the base level members, and we don't require the end user to see all the hierarchy nodes and then input only in the base nodes. So it will be difficult for the end user to understand at each base level he need to search for that and he need to input the data. Instead, if you display only the base members, for him the data entry will become very easy. That is why the base members option is provided by SAP. Now we have another option called fixed list. What is the difference between fixed list and single member which we have selected is, in fixed list what we can do is, we can do the multiple selections from multiple hierarchies. I have selected land and buildings. From net income, which is a different hierarchy, I can select financial income, clearing account, and indirect expenses, gross margin. Sometimes when we are drawing P&L and all, sometimes we need to select only some different GL accounts to be displayed in my report. In those cases, I will select fixed list and I can display only that fixed list displayed in my account rows. Now if you see, I have selected only these 5 accounts. It is showing only these 5 accounts that is displayed here. In this fashion, I can select either children of option, descendants with certain levels, and fixed list, single member, or base members. These are the options that are provided in the web section. In Excel, there are additional reporting requirements that are supported because Excel is having wide capability. But in web, this is the options that is available either in row access or in column access. Till now we have seen all the options in the row. Now if I select column also, now if you select members option, see you have all the options similar to whatever is there in the row access. Single member, children, descendants, base member, fixed list. So you can use any of the things which is required. From the current context, include starting number, all these options which we have seen there, the same options are available in the column also. Now if I want to select another member, say 2014.Q1, I will select Q1. It is displaying January, February, March, which is the base members of Q1. And I have selected parent should not be displayed. That is why it is not displaying the parent member. So whatever options is there in row access, same options are there in column access in order to display. And now we will see the data entry and we will see how it will work. Now I'll select base members of, I'll select current context because we want to input some data. We can put the data in Excel and we can copy it and paste it also. 3, 4, 9 line items. So I'm just putting for our information purposes some values. Okay, I can copy and paste it here. I think from RDP it is not getting copied. I'll try to open something. Okay, so once we want to enter the data, we have to press finish editing. That means we are ready to input the data. When we are inputting the data, you have to make sure that first thing, all the dimension members of all the dimensions should be in the base level. Then only the data entry can be possible. If one dimension member is in the top node, system cannot store the data because as we discussed, the data entry always happens at base level. So we'll select all the things at the base level. So I'm just putting, say, Australia, and currency I'm selecting it as LC. I'm selecting it as input, and product A, I'm only having one customer. I'll put customer. Now you try to copy and it will allow you to copy and paste. Copy. See, now the data has been added. Everything is in the base member. So I can save this data. You have an option here to save the data. If you open this as a report, only option you will not be finding is save data option. All other options with respect to the selection criteria, row selection criteria, column selection criteria, these buttons, everything will be the same except this save data button. That is the difference between an input template and a report in BPC. Now if I try to save the data, it will show you how many records it will save. Total 9 into 3, 3 months into 9 rows, 27 records. Press yes. Now I have saved the data. Now if you see here on top, it is automatically reflecting the values. Why? Because I have selected this option called balance sheet, and then I have selected the sum of the values. Automatically the roll up is happening till the balance sheet level. Why it is showing minus value? Because your assets and liabilities are not equal. That is why it is showing the difference. If your assets and liabilities are equal, it will show 0 value in the balance sheet. Now if you see here 400, 500, 600, 700, 800 and 900 is the total. If you see here from 400 to 900, total is 3300. And what is the assets? It is 600. So it is showing 3300 negative. Now I'll make it as 3400. Now if you see, now press save data button. Your total assets and liabilities are equal. That is why your balance sheet will be 0. So similarly, the roll-ups in the BPC system automatically happens till the top node. Now we'll just edit this report. Go to edit. Instead of base members, I'll select the descendants in order to show you how the roll-ups happens. Now select descendants, press OK. Now see, current assets is having 200, 300, which is totaling to 500. Total is 500. And land and buildings fixed assets total is, this is 1, this is 2. 1 and 2 are this 1 plus 2. That is total 3900. Now liabilities, if you see, total equity is this, total liabilities is this. So 3900. So what is the balance sheet rule? Total income minus total assets minus total liabilities, which is 0. So like the system roll-ups automatically based on the SAP related information that is available with respect to each of the GL account, which we have already discussed in our first class. We said for each of the asset we need to specify whether it is expense or income or asset or liability. Based on that, SAP is having predefined signs. Expense is always plus, income is always minus in SAP terminology. So the same SAP terminology will be followed in BPC also. So this is like normal SAP terminology with respect to whether it is an asset or income. Based on that, the signs will get automatically displayed by SAP. And the roll-ups will also happen automatically in the BPC system. Kamlesh is having a question. How does BPC validates whether debit and credit are equal when we are updating through input form? Through input form, if you are updating, there is no validation check whether it is debit or credit, because automatically after roll up, if your debit and credit are not equal, your trial balance will show the errors. Because for consolidation purposes, we will not be directly doing the data through input template. It will be trial balance upload will happen. So when you are uploading the trial balance, at that point of time, we can check whether our debit is equal to credit or not. Generally, which happens in the consolidation, not in planning, because at planning level, we will not be doing the trial balance upload and all. We will be taking different actuals and we will be extrapolating in order to get our budget or plan data. So in consolidations, we have a validations to check whether your debit equal to credit or not, and whether your assets is equal to liabilities plus equity or not. All those conditions we can keep it generally in the consolidation, which is more towards trial balance data. Now once you are done with this, you can press finish editing. Now here there is something called refresh. Refresh means once you refresh, system will bring the latest data from the database. So the refresh is used to bring the latest data from the database. And then there is something called suppress. Suppress means if you want to delete or to not show any empty rows in this particular thing, you can suppress that. And you can suppress empty and zero rows. These two options are available. And then comments. When we discuss on the comment section, we will discuss, and the work status also we will discuss when we are discussing on the different topics. There is something called more. You can print this, you can export it to CSV, and you can do the properties also, which is the owner and who created it and what is the decimal places which we have used. And in the edit section, till now I have shown you how to create the input form only, but I have an option to, I'm just selecting it as a base members in order to show you the graphs and all easily. Base members. And here, if I want to see how many digits and all, I can select from the format what scaling factor I need to use. I want to use scaling factor 1, means full precision. If I want to use number of digits as a decimal places, I can select how many digits of decimal places it needs to show. Based on that, system will display the number of decimal places also. Now I selected full precision and 0 decimal values. Now if I select 2 decimal values, it will select 3400 and 2 decimal values. Depending upon your requirement, you can maintain a full precision or a decimal points using the format option, which is available in the edit section. I am making it as 0. Now, in BPC web reporting, as I said, you can display the chart as well as the data entry in the same screen. In reporting also, you can maintain the chart. Along with the input template also, you can maintain the chart. Generally at input level, we will not maintain. But sometimes some high-end reports where they want to see by changing some of the values, what is how my pie chart will look like and all. If they want to see those things, generally we will create a input template with the graphical functionality also. As we discussed in input template and report, all the options remains the same. Only difference happens with the save data button. So we'll see that chart option also directly here in the input template. So go to chart. First time when you're creating, you have to put show report and chart. So it will display the chart. By default, some of the chat might have been selected. If you want to modify it, go to modify chat. Whatever chart you want to see pie chart, select it as pie chart, and you want to group it by time period or by account. So I am grouping it by time period. That means my grouping will be based on the time. Based on the account change, based on the time period, my graph will also keep on changing. For accounts payable, this is the graph. For accounts receivable, this is the graph. So if you want, based on the time period, all the accounts to be displayed in the pie chart, you have to maintain your chart. Based on the time, instead of time series, you want to group it by account. That means account should be displayed in the pie chart. Now based on the time period, your accounts will display in the pie chart. So depending upon your requirement, you have to change the present structure of the chart. We have pie chart, we have bar chart, line chart. All these options are possible. The format option, which we have already discussed, this will not be enabled here. This will be enabled from here, the formatting option. Kamlesh, I did not get your question. For decimal versus means, I did not get your point at all. Can you elaborate your question, Kamlesh? Hari, charting, if you want to show it again, or you got the point? Oh, thank you. Okay, but here in BPC we will be using only the single notation formatting. In the format section, we have only, you mean to say that the comma facility, this comma, instead of comma, you want to show it as the point. Press finish editing. I have to check, Kamesh. I think we have to log out and log in again in order to save that. So through preferences, you can change that formatting, whether to show it as comma or point in the web section. This is applicable only for the web section, whatever we are discussing. Okay. So once we have created the template and we want to store this template in order to use in the future. So for that purpose, you have save. When you are adding for the first time, you have to use save as. Next time onwards, you can use save. This is similar to our file save option, save as and save. So first time I'm using save as. So there are so many input forms are available. Leave it aside. We have three sections here. One is called public, another is called teams, third is called private. These are the system defined folders. If you want to create your own folder with your client name, you can create that folder using new folder option. It will create a new folder here. We'll discuss what this standard refers to, and then we'll see how to create a new folder also. Public means whatever you are storing in this particular folder, everyone can access this particular input form, whoever is having access. And in teams means only the team to which you are storing this particular input form, only the team people can view this input form. No other person can view this input form. Private means only you can see this input form. No other person in the organization can see this input form. So this is the three different folders that is provided by SAP. Apart from this, if you want to make it as a client specific, you can create a new folder. Either under public section or team section or private section, and you can store this particular form. Say I am putting Jan underscore 15 underscore input. System is very slow. It is not at all copy. So now I am saving the input form. Now I have seen how to create from here, but how to access the input form? The creation will be from the consultant perspective. The access will be through the end user, how to access that particular input form. So we'll discuss the report also, and then we'll see how to access that particular thing. Now go to new report. And as we discussed, in the input template and report, the major difference is save data button. So I am not elaborating all the other features also, because everything will remain the same. So I am just putting account. I am putting time. I am just putting add all the members. Local currency, entity is so time period for which we entered the data is 2014 Q1. Okay. Now if you see here, automatically the totals have been added directly to here. So if I don't want to see my parent, I can deselect it from column. Okay. Now I am seeing it as a report, and in report also I have an option to show report and chat. Now here also I have different reporting formats can be maintained. As I said, only difference will be the save button option. Now I have created one template. I just press finish editing. Now if you see here, the screen starts with refresh button. Here before refresh there is something called save data. So here you cannot save any data, you can just view the data if you are selecting it as a report. That is the only difference. Otherwise all the options that are available in the input template will all be available in the reporting part also. And you can save this report using save as. I am selecting this as a report. Say Jan underscore 15 underscore report. Press save. Now I have created one input form, one report. Now for our understanding purposes, we have taken one dimension in column, one dimension in row axis. In row axis, we have taken account dimension. In column axis, we have taken time. But there are so many reporting requirements. You might require additional dimension in the row axis, sometimes additional dimension in the column axis also. In those cases, how to do that? That is called nested reports. Whatever we have created till now is normal reports, and whatever we are going to create is nested reports. So for that purpose, I'll just put edit, show report only. In order to show you the report fully, I'll just put like this. And I'll select only current assets, okay, in order to show the report in a meaningful way. Okay, now I selected current assets. Now, if I want to create nested reports, that means by entity wise, I want to see what is my current assets. I have a requirement. So now what I will do? I'll bring the entity also into row axis. Now if you see here, by entity wise, it is displaying the current assets. But here it is displaying how current assets in Australia and current assets in, if I want to see other members also. So now I want to see a fixed list. I want to see it for, and in the inserted dimension, additional dimension also, you have the same options that are available. Yeah, Mitesh is having a question. If I want to see plan and budget data side by side, how can I do it? Yeah, Mitesh, I'm going to cover that in the nested reports only. System struck up again. Now if I want to see it for two more entities in order to understand easily. Australia, China. Okay, so for Canada, we want to see it. Now what you are seeing for current assets, Australia, China and Canada, receivables, Australia, China and Canada. So what you are seeing is by account wise in all the entities, what is the values. Now if I don't want to see it like this, I want to see by entity wise all the accounts at a time. Now what I have to do? I have to move this up. Select move up. Click on this particular checkbox. Move up. Now what it will display? By entity wise all the accounts. By entity wise all the accounts. Like this in nested reports, you can select by which base you want to see the other things. So that will become your base, and the next dimension will show all the values which you have selected. So like this, the nested reports you can prepare. Now whatever we have seen is a nested report created on the row. Similar way we can create nested report on the column also. So as Mitesh asked, if I want to see it by category wise also. So then I want to compare plan versus actual in the column. So now I can drag it in time category. Now here also, whether you want to make it by month wise comparison or by, suppose if I am seeing fixed list. I want to see actual, budget as well as plan. Now see, by January, what is my actual budget plan? February, what is my actual budget plan? March, what is my actual budget plan? Now if I don't want to see it like this, I want to see by each of the category the time periods. Then what I have to do? I have to select move up. By category wise I want to see the report. Now by actual, what is the Jan, Feb, March? Budget, what is the Jan, Feb, March? Plan, what is the Jan, Feb, March value? Like this, you can build nested row reports, column reports, or a combination of nested rows and column reports. In the nested dimensions also, all the options that are available for outer dimensions will be available in the nested dimensions as well. So you can bring any of the reporting requirement with the option of this. And if you want to add any other thing also, you can add it. Suppose if I want to see by entity, by customer wise. Now see, 3 dimensions have been added. Since I am having only one customer member, it is showing 1. If I am having C1, C2, then what will do? Australia, current assets, customer 1, customer 2. Like this, any combination of nested reports you can maintain in the BPC system, because it's a multi-dimensional database where you can report any dimension with any dimension combination, which is not possible in your ECC system. So this is how we can do the different web reporting requirement. In Excel, when we go, we will have additional options we will discuss at that point of time. But this is with respect to the web input template and report. Right now I am just saving this because I have already created as a save as, and I have given the naming convention. Now we have created the templates. How the end user will use these templates? Go to the home. In the library, we have reports as well as input forms. Select reports. Where we have stored? We have stored under public under ABC. See, this is the report which we have stored in public under ABC. Jan underscore 15 input, that is stored in input forms. If it is reports, Jan underscore 15 underscore report. If I want to see all, select all. It will show both input template as well as reports. Now here there is something called favorites. You want to add something to favorites. Select that and put add to favorites. Now, okay, I'll select this and press add to favorites. System is slow. Go to favorites. Jan 15 report has been added to favorites. What is the advantage of adding it to favorites means once you go to the start page, whatever you have added in the favorites, either in reports or input forms or workspaces, automatically it will display on the home screen, start page itself. By just click of this button, the end user can log in into that particular report or input template. He need not go to the library, select workspace, public, and then log in. Not required. He can directly go from the home page itself. On the same screen, it will display all the favorites reports which he is generally dealing with. Yeah, okay. Patel, Kamlesh is having question, can we have a filter on this report? Let's say the same layout but selection on entity. See, filter on this report means I did not get you what is filter on this report. When we talk about report, it is already displaying filters using the context. See, this is displaying the data for Australia. If I am selecting it for China, only China data will be displayed. So this is context is nothing but a filter. If you are asking for any other additional filter, I did not get your question properly. See, context means whatever it is displaying here is based on that. Okay. We got the system stuck up. So it will not display anything. So whatever is shown in the context will act as a filter. Now we have entered the data in the Australia region for local currency for certain data in Jan, Feb and March. So whatever we are discussing from the front end, we create cube. Automatically it will create a cube in the back end that we have seen, and it will store the data in the cube. Now we will just go to the back end and see the cube that is created, which we have already seen, and then we will see the data how it is getting stored. in order to see the full cycle, like master data, attributes, then info area, dimensions, and then cubes and cube data created in the backend. Go to RSA1. So we have created our cube in the environmental shell. Our cube name is plan_jan, where we have entered the data. Right click, display data. Field selection, select characteristics. And then select all. See, we have entered the data for C1, LC, AU, and then month-wise data 100, 111, 120, 130. This is the data we have entered. All this data will be displayed here. Like that, in the backend, system automatically stores against the queue whatever the data we have entered in the front end. So from the BPC perspective, everything we will be doing from the front end, but backend, it will create as an info object if you create a dimension, and if you create a property, it will create an attribute and save the value to the attribute. Similarly, if you create a cube, it will create a model, it will create a backend cube. Enter the data, it will create the data entry in the backend. So as we discussed, in order to store one line item, system is taking all the dimension values. If you remember, when we inputted the data, we have only dimension, account dimension in rows and time dimension in columns. All other dimensions are there from the context. System has taken for all other dimensions only the balance sheet accounts and time period, that is 2014.01, and the values only we have entered. All other dimension values like entity and then data source and then category, product, LC, customer, these are all taken from the context level. So whenever you are entering any data, it is data for all the dimensions as a single line. Whatever is there in row axis and column axis, it will take from row axis and column axis. Other data values it will take from the context. So this is with respect to the input template and report which we are creating from the web perspective. There is something called workspace, which we will discuss in our next session. The workspace, documents, how to upload the documents into the BPC system, and how to activate the audit. All those things we will discuss in our next class. So there is something called workspace, which is similar to report in the BPC web, but with additional capabilities. We'll discuss the workspace, and then we'll discuss about the documents, and then audit section. How to activate audit, we'll see all those things in our next class. No, V is having the question. Generally input by base member level only, but planning usually happens at higher level. It is not necessarily planning always happens at higher level. Planning generally happens at base level only. Only in some cases it will be happening at top node level. If it is happening at top node level, then you have to write the coding because it is not standard by SAP. You have to write the code and then enable the higher level planning, and then trigger that code and allocate it to the base level members based on certain predefined allocation. So that predefined allocations you have to maintain. You have to create the logics in the BPC system, and then you have to execute the logics in order to enable the allocation. And only simple allocation is possible in BPC. If you are creating for complex allocations, then you have to go for a BADI implementation. That is what I am explaining you. How to input at higher level means it is not by standard by SAP BPC. You have to write it as a coding. It's a development activity. It is not straight away data entry. The standard allowed BPC is from base level till top node. If you want top node to be entered, that will be generally in the rare circumstances we will be entering. That will be through coding only. You have to achieve that. Any other questions? Mitesh is having question. Can we do calculated planning? What is calculated planning, Mitesh? We are having discussions on the Excel part separately. There are a lot of other features we can do it in Excel. So you don't think only from the planning perspective, there are other features of reporting as well as some data loads through BPC Excel part. So when we discuss on the Excel part, you will be able to know other features of Excel. Mitesh, I did not get your question. What is calculated planning? Yeah, that is what I am saying, Mitesh. When we do the planning at base level, that base level can be any of the structure. So right now you are talking about a CO structure where your WBS will be rolled up to cost center and cost center to project. So that is a hierarchy. Similar way in BPC what I kept, I have land and buildings that is under fixed assets, on top of fixed assets total assets, on top of it that. Similar way you maintain the hierarchy for entity. Like your WBS is the base level, on top of it cost center, on top of it your project. Then automatic roll up will happen. Yeah, whether it is in R3 or any of the system, always the BPC allows data entry at base level and roll-ups happens in the system automatically, whether it is SAP R3 or BPC system. Mitesh, I have a question. You want to send it to R3. Where you want to send it to R3? Cost center planning. But the objects which we are maintaining in the BPC is sufficient for cost center planning. With respect to whatever you are talking about BPC to your ECC system, retraction is always possible. For retraction, you need to have your ABAP consultant, and then your FI consultant should know what data is available in your BPC system, and then he has to talk to the ABAP consultant and he has to fetch the data what is relevant for cost center planning, and then he can take the data from the BPC system. That is how retraction will work through ABAP coding. The standard ABAP coding is available. With that, your FI consultant or CO consultant who is working on cost center planning, he can take the data from BPC, but he has to develop that coding in order to push the data from BPC to cost center planning. That can be possible. The same way how we are taking the data from ECC to BW, BW to BPC, from BPC also you can take back the data to ECC using the ABAP. Any other questions? Okay, thank you everyone, and we'll meet in our next class where we will discuss the web related activities.